Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome all of you joining the public presentation organized by the Occupational Health Center. Today's the topic is so important, is talking about stress and burnout. We are so pleased to have Orianne Donig-Harder. She's the Senior Manager of Employment and Workplace Solutions at the Canadian Mental Health Association Manitoba in Winnipeg. She provides outreach education and workplace consultation to employers in Manitoba to develop plans to increase the mental health of their organizations and employees. Orient also manages the teams that make up the CMHA Employment Continuum Wellness Skills Support, which provides support to adult learning that are completing their education and employment with support, a rapid employment program for motivated job seekers. Orient also has worked in mental health and support employment since 2014 and is passionate about the role that employment plays in recovery. Orient also, the goal is to promote psychologically safety workplaces that include diversity and accessibility for everyone. So for some of the folks who know that this session is being recorded, we could share with you right after that. And if some new participant doesn't know anyone about Occupational Health Center, I will put the website linked on the chat too as well. But Occupational Health Center is funded by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. We are the community center here in Manitoba. So we provide the services to Manitoba workers with work-related health issues and work closely with the Joint Workplace Health and Safety Committee for training. All our services is free, and then please visit our website for more information and resources. Now this is the time. Oh, and also is we have the presentation, at the first part of the session. It's an hour, but we leave about 10 to 15 minutes in the second part for the Q&A. So please join me to welcome Orianne.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So it sounds like not everyone is from your organization, right? Are there people from other organizations that are joining us?
Yes, you're right.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that, but so welcome everyone. I'm a very curious person, so maybe towards the end you can tell me a little bit about where some of these folks are coming from. I'd love to hear. So before I jump into our session today, I'm going to do our land acknowledgement. So if you are not in Winnipeg living or working, I want you to think about your own personal land acknowledgement and what it means for you to live and work on the particular land that you are on. And this is our official CMHA land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the original land of the Cree, Ojibwe, Dene, and Dakota peoples, as well as the homeland and birthplace of the Red River Métis. The water we drink comes from the Treaty 3 territory of Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. Our electricity comes from Treaty 5 territory. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. So just a quick overview, what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to briefly introduce the national standard. We're going to talk about some of these different factors that impact stress and burnout in the workplace, and then we're going to talk about some stress management factors. So just a quick overview. This is a little bit of information about the Canadian Mental Health Association. We're a federation across Canada. We started in 1918, so we are the oldest charitable organization across Canada. We have 75 branches and we have around 7,000 staff across the country, and we're in 330 communities. We are a grassroots organization and things kind of develop in each community. So each CMHA looks a little bit differently across the country and even within our province of Manitoba here. We are in the midst of about halfway through our strategic plan, and this is for our first strategic plan that we created across Manitoba for all of our CMHAs. Before that, we were doing it, each branch was doing their own separately. So as you can see, our vision is to have a Manitoba where mental health is honored as a universal human right. Our mission is to advance mental health, well-being, and recovery across Manitoba. And then we have our values there. I'm not going to read them all and go through them all, but I do like people to think about their work values, their workplace values, and your own personal values, and think about how they align. We know that when people are working in a place that mirrors their own personal values, people are going to be feel a lot more success and satisfaction on the job. So it's always really important to think about where you're working and how does it fit for you. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety. This was developed through the Mental Health Commission of Canada in 2013. There are 13 factors that contribute to psychological health and safety in the workplace. It is currently under review right now, so we know that our information's a little bit dated. Pandemic, there was a lot of talk about having different factors that are specifically for healthcare workers, recognizing some of their experiences through the pandemic, moral distress and those types of things. So it is in the process of being renewed right now, and we're hoping to have a new standard coming out really soon. Today, we're going to focus on three factors that have the greatest impact on psychological health and safety. So that is psychological support, workload management, and balance. So, psychological support. So, what is it? Here's our definition. So, a work environment where coworkers and supervisors are supportive of employees' psychological and mental health concerns and respond appropriately as needed. So, this is important because we want employees to feel that they have that psychological and social support because those are indicators of greater commitment to the job and then that satisfaction and involvement in the work. It's especially helpful in protecting against traumatic stressors at work because employees will be more likely to seek and receive appropriate help if that balance and support isn't there. So if when we find that when people need to be away from work, say it's for physical health, mental health, whatever their reasons are for needing to be away from work, return to work is often quicker and more sustainable in environments where there's demonstrated psychological support for the employees. So it's really important for our organizations to provide this support to people, and that way it costs our organization less money when we have people returning to work quicker. So, question you might ask, what happens when employees lack that psychological support in the workplace? So, we know that this is going to lead to increases in your absenteeism rates. You're going to see greater turnover in employees, and you may also see increased conflict and strain between team members. It can also lead to fatigue, burnout, anxiety, and other physical health issues can come out of that as well. We also know that the lack of psychological and social support can result in people delaying their help seeking. So if people are not seeking out help, they have a not as great outcome. I like to talk about seeking psychological health the same as you would your physical health. So if you are experiencing physical symptoms of an illness, the sooner you go see a doctor and get treatment, the better your outcome is going to be. So we know it's the same for psychological as well. So if you're experiencing some mental health symptoms, it's best to get that help as soon as possible. Other factors that we know happen in workplaces where there's a lack of psychological support is you're seeing less productivity. So, what we call presenteeism. So, not only the absenteeism of people frequently calling in sick or being away from the job, maybe they're coming in, but they're not productive, they're not accomplishing what they need to accomplish. And then this also, then your bottom line, your financial bottom line, you're going to see increased costs, and then you may also see more accidents, incidents, and injuries in the workplace as well. Okay, so our second factor that we want to talk about is workload management. And here is the standards definition. So a work environment where tasks and responsibilities can be completed successfully within the time available. So if you think about deadlines, often reports are due at the same time every month. So looking at how can we alleviate some of that workload management for some of the people that report to us. So can we space out different deadlines throughout the month so that people aren't always at the grind and trying to accomplish and get things done all at the same time. So we know that supportive workload management optimizes employees' energy and focus. Also, if there's clarity about work priorities, you want to identify the necessary resources and the time that's needed to adequately accomplish the job. So we want our employees to get that sense of accomplishment, like they've completed. There's no fear. But there's pressure, obviously, because deadlines, there's pressure associated with that. But we want to take the fear and distractions out of the equation so that employees are free to concentrate on the task at hand. And there you're going to see more success in the workplace as well. So what happens when employees can't manage their workload, you might ask? So we know that this is going to when we have the higher emotional, psychological, and physical demands at work, this requires greater levels of control for the employee. So without that balance there can be an increase in feelings of inadequacy, fatigue, stress, and strain. This is obviously going to result in demoralization and turnover. So if you want to avoid some of that happening in your work environment, you want to think about how can you help people successfully manage their workload. And then our third factor that we're going to focus on today is balance. This is a favorite one. Lots of people like to talk about balance. So, our definition, a work environment where there's recognition of the need for the balance between the demands of work, family, and personal life. So, I also like to mention that what balance looks like for me might not be balance for you. Tiffany and I were just talking before the session today, and she mentioned that she noticed I answer emails early in the morning. For me, that's part of my balance is to come in early in the morning and do a bunch of stuff before things get hectic through the day before I have meetings and lots of things to do. So for me, that's my way of navigating and managing that balance piece. I think you all know why balance is important, but some of the things that we recognize that balance can reduce stress so that home and work issues are less likely to affect each other. So we don't want people bringing work home. We don't want people bringing home to work either. So we need to have that place where people can leave things at the door and move on to what they need to focus on next. So we know that work-life balance, the positive effects have been demonstrated over time and shows a direct causal relationship to physical and psychological health. In other words, people who have better balance in their work life and their home life are going to be more productive, and you're going to get more out of those employees. So organizationally, this translates into enhanced employee commitment, job satisfaction, avoidance of burnout, and improved job performance. And I think that's something that all employers are looking for, obviously. So what happens when balance is compromised? So we have employees then with those higher stress levels, and they're more likely to be dissatisfied with their work, which then leads to calling in sick more or that presenteeism being distracted while they're at work. And we know that a common source of stress is conflict between work and family roles. So recognizing, sometimes parents might have sick children. So how do we help them balance that? How do we alleviate some of their work stress so that they can focus on their home life and then come back refreshed and able to focus on the work? We know that when people have that conflict between the work-life balance, it can lead to people feeling exhausted, frustrated. They may be resentful in the workplace. And then, of course, that in turn can lead to workplace injuries or stress-related illnesses, symptoms of depression, and overall decreased health. Um, we know that more and more the Workers' Compensation Board is approving stress claims. So that I know like about 10 years ago, that was quite unheard of and very rare. And now more and more employees are able to demonstrate that the impact of stress in the workplace is causing their decline in psychological health and they are on leave. So We don't want to have this impact on our organizations. We want to be able to decrease costs due to benefit payouts, absenteeism, disability, and turnover. So if you think about your financial bottom dollar, it kind of makes sense to figure out where you can look at some of these particular factors from the standard and improve things in your workplace to benefit your finances and your bottom dollar. So here's a little graph. This is from Stats Canada report from June of 2023. And we can see some of the self-reporting that illustrates how these factors impact how we experience stress and burnout. So these are not the factors from the standard, but different factors that they measured for this particular study. So you can see heavy workload. For women is the light blue bar, men is the dark blue bar. This particular study didn't have anything for non-binary folks or other identifying folks, unfortunately. So we just have men and women. But you can see how particularly women are quite impacted heavily by stress in the workplace and what's causing that. So you can see that workload management, number one, heavy workload. And then number two, we've got the balancing work and personal life. Also kind of tied for men and women, that overtime or long work hours. So the more we're piling on people, the greater stress it's causing for them. And then as we go down, harassment's there, obviously, lack of job security, which I think is the only one where men measured higher than women, interestingly enough. And then relationship with colleagues or supervisor, that lack of autonomy in the workplace, so not having that ability to have input into decision making. So that's a little snapshot just to kind of show you where some of those factors are and what that looks like in different workplaces in Canada.
Stress
Oh,
is usually seen.
sorry, I'm going to go back for a second. I wanted to show you this little video. It's about 2.5 minutes. So we're going to jump into talking about stress and what it looks like for us. And I really like this video, and I'll talk about it in a second when we move on.
Stress is usually seen as something we need to avoid. This is not true. We need stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol to rise and fall throughout the day. Stress helps us wake up in the morning, helps us focus, learn, and remember new things. It's when people experience too much stress and start having difficulties coping that stress becomes a problem. High levels of stress can disrupt the natural changes in the body's stress response system and start to affect our physical and mental health. Over time, accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress tolerance, the bucket analogy can be helpful. Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket. This video was created by Brave. Stress is usually...
Sorry about that. Okay, I really like that video because it gives you a really nice demonstration of what stress looks like. And some of us were born blessed with the families who taught us how to deal with stress. Some of us maybe were born into families where nobody really knew what to do with their stress. And so that wasn't demonstrated or taught to us when we were younger. So we had to figure out what our taps are. So on our own, or, as we go through life and watch other people, find observation of how some people are able to manage is a really good way to learn. It's just quite fascinating to see, well, how did that person figure that out? So I really like that. Did I want to say anything else about that video? Yeah, just that we all have different size buckets and we're in control of those taps. So how do we figure out what taps are draining the water out of our buckets and what taps are false taps and putting it back in? So some food for thought for you to think about as you're thinking about how to manage your wellness. So here is another little graph I wanted to show you. So this is our 4 phases of stress. So very nicely laid out in our 4 little quadrants here. So phase 1, we're high functioning. This is, our baseline, our normal when we're doing okay and we're functioning at work, things are going well, we're doing well at home. We don't have a strong impact on our well-being with normal stress. And that's also something I should have mentioned before. It's not if we experience stress, it's when we experience stress, because we know at home, in the workplace, throughout our lives, there's always going to be something that is stressful. And stress doesn't always have to be bad. Stress can be a good thing to help us make changes, to recognize when things aren't working for us, and how we can do things better. So when we're looking at phase 1, when stress persists for an extended period of time, it's typical to feel overwhelmed. Motivation is typically high when you're operating in phase 1 and you're engaged with both your work and home life. Stressors at work or home are managed and do not impact each other. You'll find that you are committed to tasks and that you have high satisfaction. And then when stressors do arise, you're able to deal with them. You're able to, function and deal with them before it becomes a major problem. So let's say you're moving from your high functioning phase and the stresses are piling up. Lots of different things are happening. So you're becoming disillusioned. So you're starting to feel overwhelmed by those pressures at work and or at home. Could be one or both at the same time. So people often choose to disengage at this time so that they can focus their energies when they're in this phase. So like let's say there's something going on with your kids at home. You may disengage from work a little bit to focus your energies in on whatever's happening at home, and then vice versa. Like let's say you've got a new manager at work and you're not quite gelling with the way they're giving you direction. Maybe it's not working for you quite the same way it worked with your previous manager. So maybe you need to focus your energies in on work and how you're going to communicate and work with this new person. And maybe some of the things at home are taking a back seat while you're focusing on your energies on your work. You may begin to avoid certain people or tasks when you're in this phase. You may start to notice lapses of concentration, and then you're going to feel that loss of satisfaction in the area that's causing you more stress. So then when we move into phase 3, this is our withdrawing phase. So you're going to feel like a general sense of dissatisfaction, and that's going to be between work and home. There's not going to be that fine line anymore. The negativity is going to flow between your work and your home lives. And that's going to be like an open door, and you're going to start to feel both work and home to be draining. You're going to experience a loss of enthusiasm for your work, your home life, relationships, and then even into recreation. So many people and tasks are now becoming major irritants to you. So everything's kind of annoying and wearing on your patience. And then we know that this is where you're really going to start to see where issues at work are going to be affecting your personal life and vice versa. So that stress level has become so high that you're unable to maintain, and there starts to be that blurring of the lines. So then phase 4, this is our complete disengagement. So when you're reaching phase 4, you're no longer able to cope with the demands of everyday life. There's going to be that complete disengagement from your expectations of both your home and work lives. You're going to feel, that disdain for many people and tasks. You just don't have the patience or the sense of humor to deal with any of it anymore. And you're going to experience lack of motivation and enthusiasm. So that sounds pretty doom and gloom. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about cumulative stress and burnout, and then we'll talk about some ways that you can manage it. So we know that cumulative stress is that prolonged exposure to stress. So this happens when there's that lack of adequate rest or relaxation. And we know that this causes a slow erosion of functioning. So your executive decision making skills, problem solving, just ability to get things done, you're going to start to see that you are less and less able to control that and to meet the deadlines and pressures that are expected of you. You're going to experience some symptoms such as physical illness, exhaustion, and cynicism. You may feel like what we call the Sunday night scaries. So that feeling of anxiety, maybe it's a pit in your stomach or headaches, tension on Sundays when you're thinking about going to work on Mondays. So that's a quite common complaint we hear from people when they're experiencing that stress and burnout in the workplace. And then what happens then if your body is unable to get those periods of rest, you're going to have raised levels of the hormone cortisol in your body, which makes it more likely to lead to long-term negative effects because your body's unable to get periods of rest and relaxation. So when we are experiencing that cumulative stress, it's going to lead to burnout. So, the World Health Organization has defined burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It's described as physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. And although burnout is not considered a mental illness, it is definitely a mental health issue. So, you're going to experience things like depression and anxiety and those types of symptoms, even though it's not a diagnosable mental illness in the DSM. So, according to the World Health Organization, burnout is characterized by three key indicators. So, number one being that energy depletion or exhaustion. Number two is that increased mental distance from your job or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to your job. And the third one is reduced professional efficacy. So, you're no longer able to get your work done as you were able to before. So we know that burnout occurs when there's a disconnect between the worker and the workplace. So that could be a number of different things. It could be some of those factors we talked about. It could be, I kind of mentioned in passing, maybe there's a change in personnel there and things aren't flowing for you like they were before, and that's contributing to burnout. So there can be a number of different things that are happening in the workplace that can contribute to burnout. We also know that if there's a lack of reward and recognition in the work environment, that's going to have an impact because people don't feel appreciated then for the work that they're doing, and they're going to struggle to be in the workplace. Um, Autonomy, I alluded to that earlier too when we looked at that graph. So having some control over how you structure your day and do your work is very important to burnout. I know in some environments it's easier to give workers some autonomy more than others. I'll use my own workplace as an example. So, as Tiffany mentioned in the bio, I manage a couple of teams here, and they're able to structure their day how they see fit. So, their jobs involve making appointments with community members, folks that are participating in our programs, and meeting with them and helping them with their goals so they can structure that however they want. Um, on the flip side, I've gone out and spoken to some employers and employees that are in manufacturing environments. So that's my example of where, because it is a manufacturing environment and there's certain processes and there's very specific timing in place for things, those workers are going to have less autonomy and control over their work environment. So what I do in those situations, I encourage those employers to think about what are the things they can build into the work that can give people that sense of control over what they're doing. It's very important. The other piece when we talk about burnout is, I mentioned it earlier, our workplace values. So we know that values are at the heart of people's relationship with their work, and burnout occurs quicker if your work and your personal values don't align. So we know that's very important. An extreme example that one of my colleagues mentioned once, and it stuck with me, is someone who's a vegan isn't going to do well working at Maple Leaf Foods. So if you, it's a very extreme example, but just think about what are the organizational values? What does that place do? And how does that align with your personal values? If it's something like that, obviously that's not a good fit for you career-wise, professionally. So maybe thinking about some other things that you could do that might be more in alignment with your own personal values. And we know that people thrive and function best when they share praise, comfort, happiness, and humor with the people they work with and respect. So it's very important to have those relationships in the workplace as well. We're at work for 7, 8 hours a day, and that's a good chunk of time. So it's really important for us to be happy within that environment. So we know that people who experience burnout at higher levels are those who expect a lot of themselves. Those people who are very hard on themselves, they have high expectations of themselves. Maybe sometimes there's that bit of imposter syndrome happening. They feel like their work is never good enough. They feel inadequate or incompetent. Maybe it's a different factor that's happening. Maybe they don't feel appreciated in the workplace. So maybe they're not receiving that reward and recognition, and that's going to impact them psychologically as well. And then the last thing that we know is that when people are in work environments where there's unreasonable demands, so whether that's the management placing those demands on them or that person placing it on themselves, those people are going to experience higher rates of burnout. So, just some things you might notice. You might be less motivated. You may notice that you are more irritated by little things. I mentioned cynicism before. Maybe you've noticed that you're becoming less productive. You're not accomplishing things at your normal pace that you would. Perhaps you're making more mistakes. You're not laughing or having fun at work anymore. You may be experiencing illness more often, so not feeling well. I mentioned the headache, tension headaches, upset stomach, that kind of thing. You may not be sleeping well or sleeping too much. That's also a symptom as well. And then having that lack of energy. So if you're not rested, you're not sleeping well, you're obviously not going to have that energy the next day to accomplish what you need to. So ways that you can detect those early signs of your burnout or deteriorating health so that you can take action. So some things we suggest is list what burnout looks like for you. So anger, frustration, exhaustion, it looks different in everyone. So what happens for you? And then if you can identify that, you can watch for it, and identifying it early, you can take steps to prevent that downward spiral. You don't want to be caught up in that. So how can you do things for yourself to help you not get caught up in that? A suggestion, and again, this works better in some workplaces than others. If you're feeling overwhelmed, ask for help. Delegate tasks if you can, or reset your priorities. So, again, some people might have more control over that than others. And I can also talk to leaders on another time about what you can do as leaders to help folks navigate this and what you can do to have communication with your employees so that you're better able to help them with this. We want you to be connecting with people that you care about. We know that relationships and that community support or family supports, friend network, that's really important. We want you to be connecting and talking with people. That's one of the number one things for mental health in general, overall, is having those support networks. Um, Another thing is to learn to verbalize your feelings to prevent future episodes of burnout. So if you're experiencing it, how do you talk about it, and who do you talk to about it so that you can alleviate that? And then another suggestion is to minimize or eliminate exposure to negative or toxic people in your life. That can be really challenging in the workplace. But so again, that's maybe how do you have some of these conversations so that those relationships aren't antagonistic and toxic in the workplace so that you're able to function. So here we go. The meat of what you were here for, the stress management techniques. So I've kind of touched on a few of these, but some other ones I will talk about. So we know that physical activity is really important. There's more and more studies coming out now that demonstrate that our physical health is very closely related to our psychological health. So we know that exercise reduces stress, lowers that cortisol, that hormone I spoke about earlier, and improves our psychological well-being, helps improve our sleep quality as well. Another suggestion that we know works very well is our mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing, all those kinds of activities can slow and reverse the fight, flight, or freeze response that's happening in your body when you're experiencing stress and burnout. And this helps to reset your brain. So there's a couple of different apps I'm going to share with you at the end, so I won't spend some time on that right now. We know that some healthy snacks can be very helpful as well. So, berries, cashews, walnuts, dark chocolate, carrots, fish, almonds, pumpkin, avocado are all good choices. So, these are all high in magnesium and or omega-3 fatty acids or antioxidants, all of which help to lower our stress levels and feelings of anxiousness. They promote relaxation and they aid in physical recovery. So I mentioned spending time with loved ones. We know that's very important. We know laughing is very important. Laughter is one of the seven healing. I may be saying this wrong. There's seven different ways of healing in Indigenous cultures, and laughter is one of them. So it's demonstrated that just having a good belly laugh, letting things out, can be really helpful for stress. And then another little tool that we suggest is called a self-care kit. So it's a little kit that you create. It's like a little shoebox size, and you can put in different things in there that will ground you. So if you're not familiar with grounding, that is getting in touch with your senses so that you're not having that spiraling thinking that happens when you experience anxiety. So some examples of what you might put in your self-care kit might be a stress ball that you could squeeze, gums or mint, which is going to give you that icy sensation in your mouth, or maybe headphones so you can listen to some music. So those are things we know that have worked well for people. So this is kind of managing those risk factors, looking at it from an organizational point of view as opposed to a personal point of view. So we know everyone's at risk. So what can we do to alleviate that in our workplaces? So we want people to think about how they can take steps to support themselves, including, building our resilience, that self-care I just talked about, building and maintaining your support network, and then figuring out how to seek that balance for yourself between your work and your personal lives. We talked about thinking about what's in your control, what's out of your control. Worrying and stressing about things that are out of your control is quite unproductive. You can't do anything about it. You can't make changes. You can't change other people. So we want you to focus on what you can control and then letting go of other things that you can't control. That will help you to create that growth mindset. We also like to talk about peer support or professional support. So if you're not familiar, peer support is typically when someone has lived experience with certain things. So for example, in the mental health field, it may be someone who's experienced mental illness themselves and is in recovery and can speak to people about their experiences and walk alongside them in their journey. There's also, for example, what's called the Occupational Stress Injury Canada, OCCAN for short, and that is a self-help peer support group for first responders, firefighters, police, paramedics. They now include corrections officers, social workers. So anyone who in their line of work on a day-to-day basis is running into a lot of trauma and seeing a lot of really harsh things, they've got a support group for them. I believe they meet Thursday evenings, and if anyone's interested, I can pass that information on to them. So we know that peer support, people who understand what we're going through, can be really effective in helping us deal with our own experiences of stress in the workplace. And then your professional support. So do you have the EAP plans, extended benefits? Do you have access to therapists, psychologists, maybe, or your family doctor? So thinking about what benefits you can use through your work, and if you don't have them, what's within our social system that we have here in Manitoba that you could access for that. And I'm looking at the time. Sorry, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So resilience. So this is that being able to bounce back. So how do we get back to that baseline, that phase one that we talked about earlier? So we know there's never a time when life is simple. So it's not, I'm going to start taking care of myself on the weekend. You need to think, what can I do today? To take time each day to practice that and think about what you can do for yourself. So part of that is learning how to respond to negative thinking. So when you're in a bad place and you've got that cycling negative thoughts happening, how do you interrupt that and get yourself back into your baseline mode? Some suggestions, collecting positive emotional moments. So think of those best days of your life. So when you secured that great promotion that was really important for your career, maybe it was the day you got married, maybe it was the birth of your children. So just thinking about what are some really good things that have happened in your life to remind yourself when things aren't going well. I've had time in my life where things were really good and I can get back to that. Another important thing that we talk about is starting the day off fresh. So don't bring the wrongs of yesterday into today. And think about this, today's a new day. There was a problem yesterday. What am I going to do to resolve that today? And then the other thing is kindness and compassion. So by treating other people with kindness and compassion, we allow them to give that back to us. And if we create that space that promotes that kindness, we're asking to have that back in return. And then one final tip around resilience, it's from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's feel that emotion, but don't become the emotion. So an example is grief. So let's say you're experiencing some grief and you're having a hard time not crying. So you feel like you want to cry all the time. Part of that is to just allow yourself to feel the physical aspects of that emotion. So, for example, you might say to yourself, I feel the tears in my eyes, I feel my jaw clenching, I feel a pit in my stomach. And then just grounding yourself in those feelings and not allowing the emotion to run away. Um, you can do that with anger, you can do that with all kinds of different negative emotions. Obviously, you don't want to do it for your good emotions because you want to hang on to those. Okay, so a quick look at emotional intelligence. So we know that the greater our emotional intelligence is, the more likely we are able to manage stress that we face in the workplace, and it decreases our chances of moving into that burnout phase. So the characteristics of emotional intelligence are you can motivate yourself and persist in the face of frustration. You can control your emotional impulses and delay gratification. An example I use for we can all delay gratification because we can all wait 2 weeks for our paycheck. So if you need to start thinking about how you can delay gratification, you've already done it if you've waited 2 weeks for a paycheck and you can build on that. We know that emotional intelligence can help you to regulate your moods and it keeps you from being swamped in that distress feeling, and that takes away your ability to think. Another aspect of emotional intelligence is having that empathy and hope. So, recognizing even when things aren't going well, you still have hope for the future. And we know that those with well developed emotional skills are more likely to be content in their lives. So, the core competencies for emotional intelligence is to recognize and to name emotions in ourselves, to recognize and name emotions in others, and to self regulate and validate and diffuse others. I know that sounds very simple. Daniel Goleman, who has coined the term emotional intelligence, has written about 8 books on it. So, if you're interested, you can check that out. So, some tips to improve our emotional intelligence. So, as I mentioned earlier, mindfulness is the practice of intentionally focusing your attention on the present moment. So, the goal is to observe without judging. This shifts preoccupation with thoughts towards an appreciation of the moment. So, this has a calming effect and contributes to self awareness and a broader perspective in life. Staying present allows you to evaluate what's happening and not getting caught up in those strong emotions. Um, so we know that being emotionally aware is our first step to emotional management. When you use your emotions to make executive decisions about your behavior rather than allowing emotions to take over and affect your ability to act thoughtfully and appropriately. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm I see we're running out of time. We also, I just want to think about, being aware, that social awareness, it's a moment to moment experience that can't take place when you're busy thinking about something else. So when you're planning the future or analyzing the past, you can't be present in the moment. And we want to be present, and we can pick up subtle emotional shifts that take place in other people, and helps us to understand them better. So being open to feedback. So we know that openness to feedback is the ability to accept and learn from criticism. It's essential for personal growth and development. This is, when you think about stress in the workplace, sometimes how feedback is delivered to us can be not easy, but we have to be open to that, because then we're more likely to learn from our mistakes, and to become a better employee. And then that feedback loop then changes, right? We're getting less negative feedback because we're better able to take it. It helps us to understand other people's perspectives and to grow. And, obviously, in order to be effective in the workplace, it's essential to be able to listen to that feedback from your manager and incorporate that into your work behaviors. And it's helpful to depersonalize the feedback. So recognizing that they're not critiquing you as a person, they're giving you some feedback to help you grow as an employee. So it's not a personal attack on you, but it's a message to help you improve your skills and behaviors on the job. Okay, I'm going to move into just sharing some resources, and then I'll open up to questions. So this particular slide here, this is from Canada Life, if you're not familiar. So this is all free. You can go on the Canada Life website here. You can scan that QR code. This is their workplace strategies for mental health. As you can see from this slide, they have assessments, tools, and workshops that you can access. It's all free of charge. If you go in there and sign up, sign up for their emails, you'll get frequent emails. I think it's about 2 or 3 a week they send, and it gives you all kinds of different tips and tricks of strategies to help you deal with your own mental health in the workplace. And it's also good for leaders as well. If you're a leader out there in the audience today, they've got lots of great stuff there to help you um, manage and how to talk to people. This is a little plug for something we do here at CMHA. This is a micro-credential that we deliver in partnership with Red River College Polytech, and this is our Certified Psychological Health and Safety micro-credential. This is excellent for leaders, HR, or anyone in general who has an interest in improving the psychological health and safety within your workplace. So this is those dates obviously are past. We have some more running though in September, March, and June next year. So if you're interested, let me know, and I can put you on an email list and let you know when those are up to be signed up through the Red River College Polytech website. So this is 2-day immersion into the national standard, and it'll help you determine and implement a plan of action to improve the psychological health and safety in your workplace. Another tool here is Guarding Minds at Work. This is a 67-point survey that you can send out to your employees, and they can answer anonymously. And it'll give you this beautiful report that shows where you're doing well with your psych health and safety in your workplace, and places where you can develop and build. And I can also, if you were interested in that, I can help you roll this out in your workplace as well. I've done it with a few different employers. Do I want to mention anything else about this? Oh yeah, if you go on to check this out as well, there's a bunch of different supports and resources and tools available there to help you support that success in your workplace and help you come up with some solutions for your particular organization and what's happening. I do recommend that you maybe have a third party help you conduct that survey, like where I can come in and do that. Your confidentiality is ensured. Your staff will feel more comfortable knowing that their responses are not associated with them. And this allows employees to answer honestly, giving you a real picture of your organizational health. The consultant can then collect the survey results, analyze the data, and make recommendations for your organization. If you are in Winnipeg, we have our mental health resource guide. If you scan the QR code, that will take you to the website where you can have an electronic version. We also have paper versions. If you wanted some, let me know, and I can have them arranged for you to pick them up or have them mailed to your workplace. This is we update it periodically. It's all different resources that are available in Winnipeg. It's beautifully categorized. So if you're looking for help with employment or housing or therapy or whatever, it's all broken down into categories. Our next slide here. Oh, sorry, had a little glitch there. Well Central, so this is free of charge as well. This is an online recovery college. So we offer here at CMHA our Wellbeing Learning Center. So that is different workshops that are free of charge. Any community members can come and take them. They are offered during the day. So we've set up the online version for folks who are working during the day and might not be able to come down for workshops. So there's some of them embedded in this website. Sorry, you go in there, you do a little assessment. It helps you determine what would be the best topics for you to focus on initially, and then it helps you come up with a plan. So this is really good. It's quite wonderful. So that's wellcentral.ca. Here we've got, you're probably familiar with the Center for Occupational Health and Safety. We've got ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Training, and Mental Health First Aid Canada. So those you can access through CMHA here. We do have facilitators that can teach those. There is a fee involved with those, but if you're interested, let me know. And then there's a few other resources there. I talked about some of Headspace and Calm are a couple of those apps that I mentioned earlier that they do guided meditation that can help you develop and figure out what a good plan is for you. We've got our 988, which is our suicide crisis helpline, and that's available across Canada 24 hours a day. You can text or call, and it's available in both English and French. And then a few other 211 Manitoba, which would be similar to our mental health resource guide, where it's got a bunch of different community organizations that might be able to give you some help as well. So there's a few different options there. So I want you to think about some next steps. Think about what other trainings and resources you need. Some of I might have just mentioned, and think about what strategies you're going to use for yourself to help prevent burnout. So now I'm going to open it up to questions for you. This is my contact information. I will also put it into the chat as well. I'm going to end my slideshow here so I can see the chat and answer some questions. Okay. Oh, I see lots of stuff in the chat. Okay.
Thank you, Orianne. This is really, really great information and resources you share with us. On the chat is quite busy. We're talking about, they're interested to sign up for the upcoming courses section, something like that.
Okay.
And Lisa have been sharing quite a few resources and videos and something like that too.
Very
And
good.
then you mentioned about the mindfulness, kind of the meditation. Lisa, our occupational health nurse, leading us monthly when we have the group meeting, before the group meeting in the morning, about 10, 15 minutes, she's leading
I
on
love that.
something like that too. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Lots of great, creative way to relieve stress, right? To make our team more in a good, healthy work environments we're working with. Yeah.
Yeah. I popped my contact information. Oh, did my email address? Oh, yeah. Okay. My email address and my phone number are in there.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to reach out, feel free. Were there? Oh, lots of great stuff in the chat. Fantastic. Someone is interested in the micro-credential. So I see Jennifer. Jennifer, if you wanted to reach out to me, you can certainly let me know, and I will put your name on the list to get you signed up for the next time it is offered. Thank you, everyone. So I'm just curious. Oh, we've got lots of interest in the micro-credential. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
It is great. Like I have to say, I took it myself, like before we were offering it as a micro-credential, I took it myself as a participant, and it's just fantastic. It was just really good, a good way of looking at your organizational health and safety, just overall, not just like psych health, but the full picture, and just get a really good idea of what's happening in your workplace and what you can do better. Um,
Mhm.
and then, who you identify to be your partners with that? Who are the people in your workplace that are your influencers? I like to call them influencers because that's what the young people are calling them. People who are open to having these conversations, and how do you get people involved? That's great. Tiffany, I see you also shared the CBTM groups, which is, yeah, they're friends that I could help you.
Alison mentioned about, what is the micro credential program you're talking about? Can you just repeat again?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is a 2-day immersive experience where you're focusing on the national standard for psychological health and safety and those 13 factors, and looking at how to evaluate your particular workplace based on those factors, and looking at different, like, what's legal liabilities, what's your responsibility as an employer to ensure that people have a psychologically healthy workplaces. And like I mentioned earlier, we're seeing more and more claims being approved by WCB for stress in the workplace. So how can you prevent that from happening in your workplace? So looking at what kind of plan would work for your workplace, and then the final evaluation piece for it is setting up some of those first few steps that you want to use for your implementation. So you're walking away from that 2-day course with a start of a plan to get you going like as quickly as possible to ensure that your workplace is psychologically health and safety. So I strongly recommend it. It's pretty intense, um, but it's good. It will help you. Yeah. Yeah.
I think on behalf of the Occupational Health Center, thank you again, the Orianne. You did a really, really great session for us. As shocked that this is a really heavy topic, but you're using a really, really calming attitude, right, to sharing, how we deal with stress and burnout. And it's so important for everyone, not only
Yeah.
for work and also for the personal life as well, right?
Absolutely.
And then the resources you're sharing is really, really grateful. And then thank you, Lisa, to put up quite a lot of great idea and resources and helpful information on the chat. And all of you, and attendees here, have a really great conversation on the chat. I hope everyone have a really healthy and safe, spring and summer, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enjoy the really, really beautiful weather, and then take good care of yourself. Yeah. And we're looking forward to see you guys in the next session. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much.
having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, bye
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.